The views and opinions expressed on this platform are of me, myself, and I, not any agency I'm affiliated with. So please do not take what I say personally. Joining us today, we have Tylor Arsement on our podcast, 23 with the Lips. Tylor is a not only phenomenal provider, but he is also a really good friend, one of my favorite people. That probably sounds cliche, but it is proven fact. I don't know, we met through the job, and outside of the job, we become friends through that, and I don't think I'd be the provider I am today without his advice, his wisdom, his knowledge, all of the good, mushy feeling things. So, my friend, Tylor Arsement. Tylor, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hey, how's it going? I'm Tylor. Been in the EMS for about 10 years now. Fairly new paramedic. Just got my license about 3 months ago, actually. I work between EMS and fire service, joined met Alexis, and we hit it off pretty quick as friends and been besties since then.
Why you gotta say besties?
Oh, come on now.
We'll have to say it. We're pretty close. I'm just going to throw this little story in there. There was one shift when I was doing my... Side note, congrats on the paramedic. I know I said congrats about 500 times. I think I cried a little bit when you got your patch, but still so proud.
Well, thank you. About as much as I cried whenever you left me.
Oh, dude, stop. I'm going to start crying again.
No, don't do that. Not today.
We don't do emotions here. There was one ride time when I was still in the cusp of getting my paramedic and all that stuff. I did a ride time because I knew Tylor was going to be there, and I liked the medic that was working, so I was like, might as well, why not? Gotta get my hours somehow. And
well, hold on. So I was in P school as well, just a little bit behind you. It was learning for both of us.
I'm not going to play the game of who got here first, but no, I'm just kidding.
No, you definitely got there first.
Dude, you have a lifetime of EMS ahead of me, so there's no competition. But I was doing the ride time, and we got on the topic of intubations. I think we were watching a TV show, and I was like, this is why I hate this show, because they were doing an intubation. And I'm like, oh God, PTSD.
Well, that's what it was whenever you, the show was, they were intubating, and you were talking about one of your trips.
So,
because they paralyzed you and didn't sedate you at the time.
Yeah.
You knew everything going on, but just couldn't move.
No, that's exactly what it was. So we got on the topic of that, and I don't remember if I said something along the lines of I've never or you've never. I don't remember where we were at that point as far as intubating somebody.
It was you that hadn't, because that was the first shift we worked together. You hadn't intubated. I had already had 2 or 3 under my belt.
Yeah, whatever. So,
and somebody, I'm not going to say names, but somebody thought it would be a good idea.
It came up as I'll let you do it if you do it to me. So moments later, we're cleaning the equipment, bleaching.
Peer pressure.
We're bleaching the equipment, and what do you know? Next thing I know, there's a blade down my throat, and then I'm like, all right, Tylor, your turn. So we didn't intubate each other, but definitely got another side of Tylor that I hadn't seen before. So
I think we both got a side of each other we hadn't seen before.
So we go way back, literally throat-wise, and also. But no, Tylor's one of my favorite people. Mad respect for him, and just even through I know you said you've been in EMS for a minute, but through P school, dude, leaps and bounds above where I thought I would end up. So, without further ado, we'll go ahead and start the questions. Question number 1. This is always my favorite one. Why did you get into EMS? From the start as an EMT. And then why did you become a paramedic, if you want to group those together?
So, really, I got into EMS. Going through, growing up, Dad was always a firefighter and stuff. I always wanted to be on the fire department. And then, of course, oh, yeah, you don't need a college degree to be a firefighter. So, didn't really, I got into the partying and everything in school. hanging out with the wrong group of friends, whatnot. The plan was, like, after graduation, go to the fire academy. We could get on the fire department and everything, like, be like dad, like most boys want to do when they're growing up. And then, so, not long after graduation is when I had a mishap. I had been hanging out with the wrong group of friends, partying, drinking, adventuring around, just exploring with all kind of drugs and stuff. And one day had a mishap and over-partaked in the party. Noticed something wasn't right, called an ambulance, got in the back of it, and then had to get Narcan because I went unresponsive. Yeah. And then, so I was like, oh, wow. And then, so, like, pretty much immediately came back, kind of saw that side of it. I was like, man, I need to really get my life together. Like, I can't be doing all this and be a firefighter, blah, blah, blah. And then the fire academy, I applied for the position and everything, and they pushed the fire academy back for like a year. They went on a hiring freeze at the time. I was like, well, some of Dad's friends were EMTs as well, and they worked on the fire department. So I was like, well, maybe I'll go get my EMT. That way it like pads a resume kind of thing. So got my EMT. Fire department still wasn't hiring at the time. They still hadn't set in a date for the academy. So that's whenever I first started working for the first ambulance service. And then worked there for about 2 years until the fire department had their hiring. Got into the fire service and realized it really wasn't for me. I went through the 21-week academy, worked several years there, and I switched. I thought maybe it was because of the pay. I wasn't happy, so I switched to a different fire service, chemical refinery. And in that service, they ran fire and EMS, but it wasn't exactly what I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be like the whole fire and EMS lifestyle, and it wasn't. It was more of like a maintenance type lifestyle. Paid a lot more, but still wasn't happy. A lot of trainings we did revolved around medical because of everything going on in the refinery, like all the chemicals and stuff. It could hurt people and stuff. So we were always learning something new medical-wise, and it just kind of sparked my interest back into the EMS side. So I was like, I wanted to get my paramedic, but the schedule wouldn't allow me to. So I decided I was going to go back to the streets, get back on an ambulance, and get my paramedic and make big bucks. But essentially got into the medical field because of a drug addiction.
It's not funny, hold on.
No, that's hilarious. I mean, if you want to laugh at it, it doesn't bother me none.
Do you feel like, and this is not one of the questions I planned for, but do you feel like you've gotten a different perspective on, so with like overdoses and stuff, you have some providers who are like, oh my God, another overdose. Oh, you shouldn't have done drugs, blah, blah, blah. Do you feel like you have a different perspective than most providers, or do you feel like it's kind of, you get sucked in that mentality?
No, I mean, I don't want to say I have a different perspective on them, but I mean, I do know where some of these people are coming from, and it's kind of hard to explain. Like, some people want the help and want to stop, but they just can't because of the addiction. So, like, I have more sympathy for them. Like, you can tell they're wanting to try and they're actively trying, but the lifestyle they were brought up in and the people they're around continue to do it and they want out and they just don't have the help is where I'm more sentimental to. But then we still do have those ones that just don't want help and just continuously just use, and they're just like, nope, I just like using and I'm never going to stop. I have no reason to stop. So, I don't have the sympathy for those, yeah. But I do have the sympathy for the ones that are, wanting to help and just can't get it because of either they come from a family with poverty and don't have the money to be able to get help, or they come from a family of drug users, active drug users, but they want out of that lifestyle. They want to change. So, I mean, when dealing with them, I kind of show them that, I can talk to them and relate with them. And be like, look, I used to do drugs. I've even overdosed. So, it is possible to change.
It is such a hard thing, even if it's not the physical need for it, but that psychosomatic.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, if you got some of these people that have just never been addicted to anything, whether it be because, they were raised differently or, was raised in a religion, and they just don't, like, their religion is like pushes against it so hard that they just never tried it in their community. It's not around their community and stuff, so they never got addicted to anything, whether it be like tobacco or alcohol or drugs. So it's, they don't know. And then so like they work in the EMS and they're just like, oh, just quit. And I'm like, yeah, well, it's really not that easy to just quit something, like,
Yeah.
when you've been doing it for so long.
Just do better. Okay. Sorry, I didn't try
Yeah.
that one. So, since you've completed paramedic school, how has your perspective changed from being an EMT basic to being a full-blown paramedic? Like, was it a hard transition at first?
I do really still find it hard in the transition. Like now, like there's still patients that like we get in the back of the truck and I'm like, oh crap, this is a very critical patient. Like we need to go. But like muscle memory of being like an EMT for so long, muscle memory just has me like, I get in the back of the truck and instead of like worried about like starting my line, I find myself like more like getting my vitals and everything, and I'm like, oh wait, hold on, I have an EMT that can do that. I have a whole partner that can do that. I need to be doing the next step. Like, I know, like, I mean, the vitals and everything is important, but it's like, I find myself like me being the one to get that, and like, part of my problem is I have problems delegating because I'm so used to being the one that was assigned a task. I struggle with assigning a task to somebody else. So, like, my partner has to remind me all the time. She's like, hey, like, I'm here. What can I do? And I'm just like, oh, yeah.
Right.
Like, you're way more useful to me than by helping out than standing there twiddling your thumbs. I can use you for something. But, like, me and you differ because, like, you work for a service that y'all double stack with 2 paramedics.
And I'm so spoiled.
Yeah, and, like, we don't get to. It's, like, hardly ever do we get to double stack, where I can resort back to my basic skills and let the other paramedic kind of do their thing, too, and, like, work around each other. I don't know. I do find it hard to delegate and switch from being a basic for so long to being a paramedic now. No, I mean, there are pros and cons of it, but, like, I mean, one thing that I'm very happy for is there's all the other medics, like, that's on my shift or even on other shifts that I'm friends with and stuff. Like, I feel like I'm on, like, some game show or something because I can always phone a friend and just be like, hey, so sorry to bother you, but I have this patient, and go through the rundown and be like, this is what I have done.
Yeah.
This is what I'm thinking of doing. Am I on the right track? Like, this is like one of those situations, like, it's not cut and dry. It's a very gray area here. Like, what do you think it is? Like, this is what I think it is. What do you think? Like, help me out. Give me a pointer here. I've never ran this call before. I mean, you know how I am. I get brain farts all the time. And just like,
Sometimes you just need somebody to be like, no, you know the thing, do it, and just hang up.
right.
I remember, like, I want to say it's the first ALS call, whatever I had as a paramedic. I literally, like, we did what we kind of normally do. Like, I would kind of take the call a little bit, and when it came to, like, the paramedic stuff, he would take over, whatever. But I remember, like, I started walking towards the front because I was going to drive because, you know, I'm the basic. And he looked at me, he's like, what you doing, bud? And he, like, started inching towards the back door, and I'm like, oh, God, wait. And he's like, good luck, and closed the door. In that moment of panic of, like, because you do your clinicals and stuff, and, like, you do everything, and you do your clear times even, and you're like, okay, I'm the medic, but you have somebody with you. And it's that moment of, like, oh, God, it's me. I am the one. And then you look at your patient, and you're like, oh, man.
Well, it kind of reminds me, like, whenever my daughter was born and, like, they sent us home from the hospital, and I'm just like, what am I supposed to do with you? Who trusted me with your responsibility to be responsible for you? Like, but, I mean, I still have my days where so I talk to my old partner, the one I had through all of P school, and like, every now and then he'll call me or I'll call him or something, we'll talk. And he's like, so how you liking it over there on the west side with your patch? And I'm just like, take it back. I want to go be your partner again.
And that's what, like, I used to say, like, I never understood how people would let their paramedic lapse and go back to being a basic. And, I mean, like, not only a full year in, and I'm like, you know what? Doesn't sound like a bad idea.
Sometimes I contemplate that, like, some of those days, we just get something, like, off the wall day, and, like, it's just, like, it's stuff that'll blow your mind, like, just make you stop and, like, scratch your head, and I'm just like, yep, nope, is this really for me? Like,
I'll have streaks of where like I just get all this stuff and I'm like, oh man, dude, ever since you've gotten your patch, like the calls you've had, most medics don't run in their entire career. So like I feel like it hits different with you because it's like the EMS gods are like, oh, you have your patch now? Congrats. Here's everything.
That all started like even when I was a basic though, because I mean like when me and you crew changed together, like how many days you walked into the station and we're coming off of a call like and our truck's just destroyed and missing all kind of stuff because we're having to come back and restock. And me and old Pickles is over there like, nope, you can have this. Like, I'm not even touching this truck. Like, we clocked out on the way here. Like, we're done.
I'm walking in like all fresh and I'm like, oh, how was shift? And you guys are literally like, you
Dead.
hadn't slept all shift and you're like out halfway out the door and I'm like, wait, what do we need? Wait, come back.
Life of 61. Like, we just never got a break over there, it felt like.
No, there were no, when people still don't believe me when I'll be like, yeah, we would run 22 hours straight. Like you're either posted, you're running calls, you're doing transfers, whatever, but there's no like, oh yeah, well, oh, so refreshed. We slept all night. What is that? What does that mean on 61? It doesn't mean anything.
No. And I mean, it was always just go, 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 go. And I mean, it was nothing for us to put 1,000 miles on the truck in a shift and never leave the parish or never leave our little area because like we were always bouncing from like right up north to down south and just everywhere.
And then if you get a call in your area, it's not like you can bring them to the hospital that's 5 minutes away. Like, no offense, but it's a Band-Aid station. Like, it's not even, your closest hospital is what, like 20 minutes away, and that's like the sister hospital.
Yeah,
Like,
that's Band-Aid station. Like they didn't for anything with like a trauma, cardiology, stroke. Like we're a good 30 minutes from the closest hospital, easy. But I mean, if you had Momo fell down and just wanted to get checked out, like okay, yeah, the sister hospital,
yeah.
so we could go drop there because there was nothing really majorly wrong. But if there was any kind of criticalness, we were 30 minutes, 45 minutes. Sometimes even an hour to get to the level 2. So
It makes you a stronger medic in some ways because, like, you're not flying them out, or you can't fly them out because there's a rain cloud in the sky, the singular rain cloud in the sky. So you got to figure out what to do for the next 40-something minutes. But
so once I got my patch, they moved me over to the west side, and I'm further from hospitals there. We had one the other day that was out so far away that like I was just like 45 minutes from all 3 hospitals, and I was just like, take your pick and like let's go. Some of the places over there, they're just so far away, and like you got like over there on the west side, like if you're on the lake, like you got a trip 30-minute response time because they're just so far away. And like they're out in the middle in these back country winding roads that you can't go more than like 15 miles an hour on. The truck's gonna fall apart, and like the roads are just dirt rock roads kind of thing. Like one call in particular, like luckily we got to be able to fly this guy out because he was so critical. But if I had to transport him by ground, like I was looking at an hour and a half to a hospital that was able to take care of him. But like out there, like there's so many trees, like we don't have enough room for landing zones, so we about had to shut a highway down just to be able to land a helicopter to be able to fly this dude out because he really needed it. Luckily they had found somebody's yard and just like commandeered it. Volunteer fire department's like knocking on the door like, hey, y'all stay inside, we're gonna land a helicopter right here next to your car real quick.
they're all eating like lasagna for family dinner. They're like, wait, what? And you know good and well they all felt like heroes after that. They were all like, we saved a life.
Oh yeah, calling their friends like, you'll never guess what happened. We let the helicopter land in our yard. I gotta be honest, I don't know if those people really did that. I can't say that they did, but some people out there definitely do that.
So with all of that, and like we talked about before, just it's cool to like have those experiences and whatnot, but at the same time, like there's some days it's hard to clock in because it's like this again. Like there's so many aspects outside of just the calls we run that weigh on you in this job, and then like the things you carry with you, and just Like, you're past the lifespan of somebody in EMS already with your 10 plus years, just as a basic. So, like, what keeps you going in EMS? Like, what helps prevent burnout? What keeps you showing up for the next shift?
Knowing I got a kid back at home that I gotta provide for, like, gotta keep food in her mouth. So,
big motivator.
but it's not. I can't even say it's like the lives we save or anything like that does it. It's those times whenever you do get that bit of downtime and like you go into the McDonald's or go grab a bite to eat or something, and you got the kids looking at the ambulance and stuff like that, and like and talking about wanting to be medics and stuff, and then coming home, and my daughter, she's over here telling me she wants to watch the Doctor Show, which is Chicago Med.
Good
She
one.
calls it the Doctor Show, and then she likes to watch the what she calls the Pomedic Show, not paramedic, Pomedic,
That is
which
so
is
weird.
Night Watch, and like she loves to watch it because like, oh, that's what my daddy does, and like she wants to be a paramedic. She's 4 years old and wants to be a quote unquote paramedic. Like that's what she tells people she's gonna be, is a paramedic. So like she has like some old supplies and stuff that we're getting rid of, like outdated stuff, like 4x4s and bandages and stuff. So like she wants to bandage stuff. She has like her own little first aid kit, and, like, so sitting down watching TV, and then like next thing I know, like I have a whole. She tells me I have this whole big old cut on my leg that needs to be bandaged, and I walking around with 45 pounds of gauze on me, wrapped up with some Coban. Yeah, and there's nothing on me, so it's like she wants to be a paramedic, and then like so I think for like her birthday or Christmas or something, got her a stethoscope, because like what 4-year-old can actually say stethoscope, because mine can.
A little bit
And
of pride.
like, well, she's always seen mine and stuff, like come home from work and put my stuff down on the table or whatever, and like have my stethoscope sitting there. She's asked what it was, and I told her, so it's like now she could say it, but she always wanted to play with mine. So I got her own like little toy stethoscope, and then she wanted to learn how to use it, so taught her how to listen to lung sounds with hers and everything. So like that's what she does. Like she on her baby dolls and on her stuffed animals and stuff, like she plays medic on them. Like she doesn't even play doctor, like, oh, like put you on the table and evaluate you. She's like no, she's throwing baby dolls in the back of her little 12-volt electric car thing and just like hauling butt across the yard. Like I'm a paramedic. So like stuff like just little stuff like that, like the fact that she looks up to it so much is what keeps me going in the field. Like, yeah, she wants to be a paramedic, so like I have to show her that this paramedic lifestyle is actually good. Like there's good out of it and stuff. So I mean, mainly for her, but it's the other kids and stuff too that come up and have interest in it, and they ask questions and stuff like that. Plus the friendships that you make on the ambulance and stuff, they keep you going a lot.
Yeah.
Like, if I didn't have the friends I do have in this field, I wouldn't be here. I'd have done left.
Not only does it matter who your partner is, but it matters when you get into this field that you have like a good, outside of your partner, like that you have on a regular basis, just a good support system in the field itself. Like it is make or break, man.
Oh yeah, it absolutely is. I mean, the station I'm at, like the next closest truck to us, like has great people on it. When I first moved over there, and like one of my first calls over there was actually a cardiac arrest, and on the side of the road, older gentleman was driving his wife and his grandkids. Said like, oh, my chest hurts, grabbed his chest, pulled over to the side of the road, put the car in park, and then just went unconscious. Like, it was actually me and a supervisor get on scene. We realize exactly what it is, take the patient out of the vehicle, we start doing our thing. Well, the other crew, I had only met them for the first time that day. And, like, in passing, like, hey, how you doing, kind of thing. And, like, next thing I know, they were out of the area, coming back from either another call or a transfer or something. And, like, I hear on the radio, hey, do you want us to back this crew up on it? And dispatch was like, yeah, go ahead. So they're like, okay, we're 3 minutes out. Well, next thing I know, paramedic gets out, jumps in the back of my truck. Supervisor steps out of our truck, and I holler at my partner, all right, let's go. And we hit the road, run into the hospital, and like the paramedic that had jumped in with me, she was like, what you need me to do, blah, blah, blah. And then like after, like, so this is probably like my fifth or sixth shift as a paramedic. And like as a paramedic, like still the ink is still wet on my certification kind of thing. And she's like, what do you need me to do? And I'm like, well, I've done XYZ. Like I don't think there needs to be anything else that needs to be done. And she was like, well, what can I do to help? And I'm like, I don't know, what do you think? And she was like, dude, you got it all covered. Like, you've done everything already. She was like, we're just going to do CPR. At this point, we were, like, at the point she jumped in, we already had IV access. We had already started pushing meds and everything, had the patient intubated. And we just kind of got to a point where, like, we were just doing CPR and bagging the patient. And, like, when we got off of that call, she was like, hey, man, good job. Like that was a great job. Like, for this being like pretty much your first cardiac arrest to run, like you kind of like you had it all together. So I realized like how genuine she was, and like our friendship kind of just sparked after that. Like she's one of the people I go to when I have a question. I mean, she's on my shift, so like I know when she's working, when she's not, kind of thing. So like I know I can always call her, and like we'll sit at the station sometimes in passing or something and talk about calls and stuff. So like having her around is like huge for me. Like, so I lean on to whenever I need something while on shift, especially at late nights. Like I've called her on accident in the middle of the night before, like, hey, quick question. Like, or hey, I need help. And like her and her partner are just like good, genuine people, always willing to help me. Like we had a bariatric patient the other day that like super late at night, and like called them and woke them up and was like, hey, can you come help me with this? And they're like, on our way, send us the address. And like they just showed up and like willing to work. And then like you could tell, whenever I called her, you could tell she was sleeping, but she like didn't hesitate to come help me. So it's people like that keep me going in the field.
How do you balance your work life and like your personal life in general? Because again, like going into like the idea of we have those heavy calls and stuff. I mean, it's hard whenever like I don't have to come home to a kid. I come home to a husband and a dog. But like you have to carry whatever you had on shift home. So like how do you balance that? How do you balance the aspects outside of this job, coming home with this kind of stuff, and then knowing you got to like compartmentalize in a way? And like how do you decompress after shift? Like what's your setup? What you got going on, Tyler?
So like the way I handle it is, I mean, like it kind of goes back to having those people around you to make the shifts go by. That like I have those people I can call on my days off too. Like, hey, I ran this really bad call or something, and I need to talk about it, and I can talk to people, so I don't have to bring it home to my family. I don't have to talk to people that don't see the side of that we see of everything. So like I mean, there's been several times that me or you has called each other and talked about stuff. So talked about a call or critical calls and stuff like that to be able to vent and get it off our chest and stuff. So I mean, I do that a lot. I mean, and I have multiple people I call, and when I need something. So like if you're busy, I have other people to call, or sometimes I just need to hear it from a guy's perspective or something, and call one of my guy friends or something, kind of thing. So I mean, it just all depends on the situation.
So you're saying that we're not bros?
So and oh, we're bros. We're definitely bros, but I mean, like, and then a lot of what I do too is sometimes I'll go fishing by myself, or like, I mean, I hunt, so go sit in a deer stand by myself and just kind of like sit in my thoughts and like be able to think about it. I don't go to work, is the way I see it. I go to work to learn. So like every call I'm learning something. I try to make sure there's at least one learning point off of every single call I run, to where it's an education thing and not a work thing. Because I mean, if it was all work, then it'd be miserable. If I make a learning point off of it, either a learning point or a teaching point for my partner who is an EMT, like I try to teach them something off of it, or I learn something new and teach them something, kind of thing, to where it kind of makes it more enjoyable to do it, and not just always death and just bad stuff, people in a bad situation, like, kind of thing. It's the plus side of everything. So just try to keep learning as a coping mechanism. If you get to a point, in my opinion, if you get to a point where you're not learning anything in the field, then it's time to get out, because you're just burnt out, and like you're not going to enjoy it anymore, and you're going to end up being miserable, and then which in turn drops morale of your partner, and then when they go work with somebody else or something, pick up overtime, they can potentially bring somebody else down. So like I try not to bring anybody down and try to build it up, but
Nobody wants to work with that medic that, and as soon as you say salty, like everyone in EMS can picture at least one person that it's like they needed to quit a long time ago. Like they needed to get off
oh,
the truck and like it's time to clock out and go home forever. Like please don't come back.
oh, absolutely. Like I can think of a couple that are like that, but that's just without even thinking. Like that's just some faces pop into my head immediately whenever I think salty medic. And I'm just like, no, they need to, like, it's time for them to go before they start bringing everybody else down and making everybody else's life miserable.
I remember I picked up that shift as a clinical with because I knew you were going to be on it, and I like the medic. Bless his heart, um, can't teach, but he's a cool guy to work with. He's cool to reflect from, but can't teach. And so I was like, at least Tyler can teach me some stuff. So I picked up.
Shoot, I wouldn't even know if I could teach you anything at that point.
But like you knew stuff. So I was like, I'll do this. I need the hours. I like Tyler. I like this other medic. And we had that code, and it was like, it was the first one I ran as a baby medic student. So I was like, ooey, kind of a little over my head. And so like, we did it the best we could. Like it had its output, whatever. But like after, I remember we were in the bay, and I'm like, I think you had already gone inside, but I'm sitting outside. I'm like, man, that was it's different when you run a code as a medic versus an EMT, because the EMT is like, okay, I'll just do what I'm told, and like the medic is like you have all the tools and you have the knowledge. I mean, you can't control the outcome, but at the same time, like and so if it doesn't go how you want it to, it's kind of that added weight with it. But so I'm in the bay, like beating myself up mentally. I'm like, wow, I don't think I'm cut out for this. And you came outside, you're like, hey, boo, what's wrong? And I'm like, I just don't know about this. And you, I can't remember or pinpoint exactly what you said, but you were like, one, you did the best you could. So stop beating yourself up. And I'm like, okay, like wiping tears. I'm like, if you say so. And then you're like, two, like you did the best you could, and you cannot control what happens. You did the best, you knew what to do, you did the things, whatever happens, happens. And you cannot live in that. And so, like, just want to say thank you for that. You probably kept me going in paramedic school after that because I'm like, you're right, Tyler, I'm doing the best I can.
Well, I mean, I think we both kept each other going through paramedic school. I mean, you were a few months ahead of me, so, like, when we were taking tests and stuff, like, we were, like, holding each other accountable, making sure everything got turned in on time and stuff, making sure everything was caught up. And then, like, we would, like, even because we were both EMTs on the same truck, just different shifts, so, like, at crew change, we would talk about the calls we ran that day and, like, hey, like, I ran this, like, let's look at this 12 lead together that we ran for our partner or whatever. Hey, this patient showed with this symptoms, like, this is what we thought it was, but what do you think? Like almost like pre-gamed it. I think having somebody, like, right there, and I mean, we were only, like, what, 2 or 3 months apart out of school, through school, so, like, we wasn't that far off, but, like, having that other person there to be able to kind of push through and talk medic student stuff, like, it helped.
Kind of like you said earlier about like the learning aspect of the job that keeps you going. If you're not in this for the educational aspect and the continuous learning, because like you'll send me stuff and you're like, have you heard of this? And I'm like, no, what is that? And I'm like, oh, very good, Tyler, I appreciate you, because I can now be a medic again.
Because, I mean, in P school, it's a lot of information getting thrown at you at one time, and, I mean, there's no way to retain all that information in that short amount of time you're in school. So, like, like there's a lot of stuff that I'm not even gonna say wasn't taught to me that I just forgot, and like so I have to ask about it. Like, hey, I remember this, but like, what was the more detail? What was the like on down like all the way? Like, let's break it all the way down, and then like so people send me stuff all like. One of the guys, he'll send me stuff all the time, like when he reads something, because he's constantly learning himself and like constantly looking stuff up. One of the things I kind of always go with is like if one person has a question about something, that means somebody else has that same question. So like if I have a question, then you may have had that question as well, but you may have not had somebody at your disposal to be able to ask that question to that may or may not know about it. So like if I'm gonna learn something, like I'm gonna send it to you, and if you already know it, cool. If you don't, well, now here's an opportunity to learn it. Every time we talk, we end up talking about something else like that I learned or that you learned. And
Right. What is the craziest or funniest call you've ever had?
put me on the spot here.
It's not like I didn't send you these questions.
I don't know. I mean, I'd have to go back to the craziest call being that one that when we got in that wreck.
Okay,
We had,
didn't you guys run on that patient earlier that day? It was the same patient.
yeah. So we get yeah. So we that's the bad part. That was the worst part about it. So like, it was probably I don't even remember what time it was. We get called for probably 60, 70-year-old gentleman who has a nosebleed. Well, we go en route to it and everything. We get on scene, and he actually got his nosebleed to stop right before we got there, and he hadn't bled pretty much since like right after he got off the phone with 911. So we get there, we talk to him and everything, and he's like, yeah, no, I don't need to go no more, blah, blah, blah. And we're like, okay, well, like, you obviously thought it was a big issue that you called 911, so, like, we're here to transport you, like, let us bring you in. He's like, no, I'm not going to go. So we're like, all right, here, sign this AMA, like, you're refusing our services against medical advice, blah, blah, blah. So we leave, we go back to the station. I remember we were heating up our food. And then,
Rip.
like, we had one microwave in the station, so, like, we're taking turns heating up our food. Pickles gets his food heated up. I didn't get mine heated up.
Of course you did, as a medic.
So yeah. So we bolt out of there. We bolt out of the station. We get a call. Phone rings. Hey, 10-8 for an emergency. We get everything together. We run. Get back over there, and we're like, when we get in the truck, we're like, oh, it's the same address we just left a little bit ago. And I mean, we hadn't been off this call for 20, 30 minutes at most kind of thing. So we're like, all right, we're going back over there for the same complaint, patient complaining nosebleed. Get over there. Sure enough, he's got blood pouring everywhere. He had changed his shirt after he had got his nosebleed to stop. This new shirt he had on is covered in, that he was actually putting on when we were there earlier, the first time. It's covered in blood now from his nosebleed. He's just like, yeah, I can't get it to stop again. And we're like, all right, let's go to the hospital. So then, like, drive the 20 minutes to that sister hospital, and like driving down the road, and out of nowhere, we were going southbound on a road. Lady's coming northbound on a road, and just out of nowhere, like, she just tries to turn into a parking lot. And as soon as, like, our headlights lined up, she just turned her car and boom! It ends up hitting us, causing the whole wreck, and then everything went downhill from there.
Downhill. Happy birthday, Tyler.
Yeah, happy birthday, here's a drug test.
Dude, I still, like, when it happened, it was, again, hearing the radio transmission, I'm panicking. And then after, like, when you told the full story of, like, she's turning into a car dealership. It's like 9 or 10 at night. Ain't nobody there.
Yeah.
I still get mad thinking about that. Like, I wasn't even involved in it. And I'm like, man, this lady is all kinds of wrong. Like, this is all kinds of shady. And now, love that.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I could say that was good that came out of that call was, like, sitting in the hospital whenever Sam comes in and was like, and she's like doing all my inpatient stuff. She's like, oh, she's like, so what's your birthday? And I was like, today, 1993. And she's like, wait, what? I was like, yeah, like, today is my birthday. She was like, oh my God. And then, like, so, like, a little while later, whenever y'all were in there, I had probably been in there for about 30 minutes in the room for about 30 minutes before you got there. And then while you're in there, she comes running back in and was like, happy birthday. And it was right at so my birthday's in November, so it was like right at that time that like Christmas cookies and everything were coming out. And it was like those sugar cookies wrapped up in a napkin. She was like, it was such short notice, I didn't know what else to get you. It gives me like 6 of those small little sugar Christmas cookies. And I was like, well, birthday present. And then one of the supervisors comes in and was like, here, happy birthday, Tyler. Here's a cup. Go pee. And I'm like, yay, appreciates my birthday too. And he gave me a whole piss test. So I can never say didn't give me anything other than a paycheck, because they gave me a drug test. And that whole shift leading up to that was like non-eventful. We had very few calls that day. It was like actually a very calm day. Had a few minor transports. I think we had like a couple BLS transports that we had to make that day as well. And then from there it was just kind of like we were just chilling out whenever that came in, and it was just another, for the most part, routine call that just...
When you get like comfortable, the mediocre calls that like you got to watch out for. Didn't anticipate that it was literally getting T-boned on the way to the hospital.
Yeah. Well, and the part that is kind of bad about it was like, so my partner had hit his head in the back of the truck. No, he had no serious injuries or anything, but he was out of work for a while because of the suspected concussion and stuff. So like, being in the back when the wreck happened, he didn't see anything coming. He wasn't able to brace for it or anything. Like, I barely even saw it coming. I didn't have time to warn him or anything. So, like, when we came back to work, like, he even struggled with getting in the back and not being able to see anything.
Like, whenever my partner, like, slams on the brakes for a second, I'm like, oh, God, I can't imagine, like, you sitting there doing your report, talking to the patient, whatever, going to start another blood pressure, and then all of a sudden your world's almost literally getting turned upside down.
Yeah, and I mean, so the impact of it, like, so the way it happened, like, there was a ditch right off the shoulder. So, like, when we got hit, like, we kind of it pushed us off the road and the truck turned sideways, and we kind of slid through some grass and stuff. And at one point, the truck was, like, up on 2 wheels and almost flipped, and somehow, like, it landed back on all 4 wheels. So, like, luckily we didn't flip, but just, I can only imagine being in the back at the time, like, even being the patient strapped to the stretcher, and next thing you know, like, you're, like, looking out the back windows of the truck and, like, just see you can see the grass and everything, and all of a sudden it's just kind of, like, perpendicular to you, and you're just like, oh, okay, all right, like, this is not how this truck is supposed to be driving. All for a simple nosebleed, like.
But if you didn't need to go before, sir, you need to go now.
Well, I mean, I will say, like, that's the importance of strapping a patient in real well, because, like, he was strapped in real well, and, like, had he not been strapped in well, he could have easily came off that stretcher and onto the floor or something and caused more problems. But he was strapped in with all the straps and everything, so, like, it held, like, those straps actually held him onto the stretcher, so he had no injuries off of the wreck itself.
Safety first.
And then it was just kind of like me and my partner that had our injuries, but, like, I had my seatbelt on, my partner was in the back with his seatbelt on and stuff. But, I mean, when you're kind of getting flopped around and don't even know what's happening, just whiplash, and you got a cabinet right there next to you and everything, like.
And those doors, they slide closed, but they slide open so easily. Like, you got something heavy on the top cabinet, like, you're gone. That's it.
Yeah.
Here's your head wound.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was, it got interesting quick. That's for sure.
And not to mention, the ambulances over there, they're so top heavy.
I don't know how we didn't flip on that one. Like, it's so top heavy.
Because it was your birthday.
Like, I don't know how. Yeah, that's exactly what it was.
You have to live to see another day. Happy birthday.
Right.
I remember, like, driving through actual hurricane weather, or as they say here in Utah, hurricane weather. And, like, the wind's blowing so hard, there's rain, and you feel the ambulance shifting, and it's like, well, if we get blown away, I hope workers' comp covers this.
Right?
What is a piece of advice you'd give to someone either going into EMS or someone already in EMS? Either they're a basic, they're in paramedic school, they're a new paramedic. Like, what's something you want to say?
Don't do it.
No, stop.
Absolutely do not do it. I don't know. Like, never stop learning is what I'd have to say. Always learn. Always keep learning. Because if you don't, you're going to get stagnant and you're going to get burnt faster. Enjoy it. Take every moment in. You're going to have those calls that make you contemplate life and contemplate the job kind of thing. But at the same time, you're going to have those other calls that are very rewarding. So take them for what they are. Which, I mean, I know always keep learning sounds very cliche, and I'm sure everybody's going to say the same thing. Or most everybody will say the same thing, but...
It's a good one though. It's so important to keep that in the back of your mind because, like you said, it's kind of easy to get into that whole like, oh well, it's another shift, and then oh it's another this type of call, or it's another run like this, and then like certain calls, it's the same thing, the same routine, whatever. But keeping that kind of like this is a learning opportunity no matter what. It's important.
Right.
It's very important.
Yeah, I mean, and another piece of advice is whenever you do have those rough calls, talk to somebody about them. Like, talk. Don't hold it in, because the more you hold it in, the longer you're going to dwell on it, and the longer you dwell on it, the more mental issues it'll cause. It'll put a lot of strain on you. You end up becoming somebody you're not. Like, it's happened to me where like I used to try to be like the tough macho man, like, oh, I can handle it, and like running all these critical calls and stuff throughout my career, and like, oh, I don't need to talk to nobody. That's for weak people. Well, it's not really for weak people. You need to talk about it because it drains you mentally and physically to the point where like you can't even get off the couch anymore. So, I mean, it'll change you. So, like, definitely talk to somebody about it. Get that stuff off your chest. Whether it be, like, a psychiatrist or another medic or something, your partner, somebody. Get it off your chest. Learn off of it. I mean, it sounds kind of bad to say, but every bad situation, something good can come out of it because you can learn something new off of it. You might get to meet new people off of something. So, like... make the best out of any situation, good or bad. Just make the best out of it.
Somebody could be dealing with the same exact thing. Maybe it's not the same exact call, but like they're carrying that same exact weight, but they don't want to say anything because they don't want to look weak because that's the stigma we have in EMS. Even though we're actively trying to break it, especially like I feel like newer medics, we're trying to break that stigma of suck it up, buttercup. You need to deal with this. If you can't deal with this, you're not cut out for this job. I mean, you can't cry after every single call because that's just too much. But like those heavy calls, even if you don't feel like it affects you, in the long run, they weigh you down, and they come out in ways you don't expect. Like you come home and you unload on somebody, or like your loved one, or you'll just be driving and it's like you feel like you'll drive past where a certain call happened, and it's like you start feeling it, and you can't label it, but talking to somebody, it could be something that they're facing and they just don't want to say it. But when you kind of like take the lid off of that jar, it's like, oh wow, somebody else is dealing with that. Kind of gives an outlet for other people too.
Oh yeah, and I mean, it's not so like each call may not drag you down, but it's whenever they start accumulating and everybody, and from what I've seen and talked to other people, everybody has had these shifts or something where it's just a bunch of bad in a shift or a stretch of shifts. So like, and then it just like it piles up, and then you don't see a light at the end of the tunnel. It just seems like everything's bad. So I mean, you got to be able to get that stuff off your chest, because that's when it's gonna catch up to you, is just having everything pile up on you.
If you could change it all, if you could go back to being day one in EMT class, whatever. Would you still take this path and go into EMS, knowing what you know now? There's no shame in saying no. There's no shame in saying yes. Just honesty. What you got?
Honestly, no. I wouldn't take the same path. Knowing what I know now, I wouldn't. Because I know how much I enjoy it. I would actually, if knowing what I know now, I would have went back. I would have tried harder back in high school, and had the grades to be able to go to college and actually get like a doctorate or something. You'll be a doctor, may go into more debt than what I am, but but pursue it further. Um, or even nursing or something like that, rather than going. It's not that I'm against paramedicine or anything, but I'd want to go further. I wouldn't have wasted so much time, because I mean I was EMT for 10 years before getting my paramedic patch and everything. So, and like I would have done this a long time ago. And I mean I can't say I would have changed the route I did it, but like I'd have went EMT, paramedic, RN, PA or something, or or nurse practitioner or something like that. So I mean, I can't say I would change the route, but I definitely wouldn't have waited this long to get on the path, especially after finding out, like working through the fire service and realizing that me personally didn't enjoy it as much. I would have stayed on the medical side and done this a lot sooner.
Recent or past call that's challenged you, whether it's like that, oh God, I'm a paramedic moment, like you talked about, or it's like something that like really made you think, or
So actually there was one that not too long ago. Me and you had kind of talked about it before. We got dispatched for a 70-something-year-old male, maybe 80-something-year-old male. The call notes came, complaining of shortness of breath and chest pain. Call notes came in. He was cool, pale, diaphoretic. And so like we're like, okay, chest pain, shortness of breath, cool, pale, diaphoretic. Kind of pre-game in here, like what all could it be? And I mean, there's plenty of different options it could be, but like, hey, we were going out to the middle of nowhere, so it's like, hey, let's go ahead and get a helicopter en route. Just worst case scenario, like let's get ready to fly this guy out in case he is having a heart attack or something. It is that bad. We make it to the scene, get on scene, make patient contact, and dude's sitting in his recliner and he's leaning forward and he's kind of got what I assume is his son, but is a family member. Guy keeps calling, the family member keeps calling him Pop, so I'm like, okay, maybe it's his son. Family member, he knows enough about this guy. The patient's talking to us through some shortness of breath, obvious respiratory distress. He is white as a sheet of paper, as a sheet of computer paper. He's super, super sweaty. He's got a t-shirt on, and it is soaking wet. Cut his shirt off of him to be able to, before I move him, I decided, kind of getting the update from him. He's had history of heart attacks before. He had some other kind of respiratory problems. I don't remember all of his medical history and everything. But, I mean, he had a little bit of medical history prior. So before we move him, I make the decision, like, hey, let's go ahead and get a 12 lead before we move him over to our stretcher and get on the road so I can try and get a clear picture, put the electrodes on him, try to put all the electrodes on him, and they're just not sticking because he's so wet. We keep trying to dry him off. We're grabbing towels, paper towels, anything we can get our hands on that's dry. Trying to dry him, using alcohol preps and stuff, trying to get him dried up. Finally, we get him to be able to stick enough and get a 12 lead on him. 12 lead come back immaculate, no elevation, nothing, no obvious heart condition on there, no new stuff on there. And I'm like, okay, yeah, like we listen to his lung sounds, and I have rails throughout his whole lung field, and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, he's in flash. So fire department had tried to put him, but they had made it there before us, and they had tried to put him on non-rebreather, but he kept just taking it off. They said he wasn't tolerating it well. So they had him on nasal cannula. His blood pressure was high. It was 180s over 110s or something like that. Get a line on him. We're trying to move him to the truck, and I'm explaining to him that I'm trying to put him on CPAP while he's awake. He's talking to me and everything. He's the one answering all my questions about his medical history and stuff. So I'm explaining to him, like, hey, man, I need to put you on this CPAP. It's going to be continuous pressure. Like, I need you to keep it on. It's what's going to help you breathe better, yada, yada. Get him in the back of the truck. We got him on CPAP. He's still talking to me. Well, in the midst of moving him from house to stretcher and rolling the stretcher out to the truck, getting in the truck, he was sweaty again. So, like, he was still sweating real bad. So the electrodes had fallen off. Well, like, the cables were kind of laying on the floor of the truck. So I reached down, grab them, pick them up, and I'm like, oh, like, grab a new set of stickers. And next thing I know, like, whenever I go to put them, turn to, like, he was still talking to me throughout this whole time. And then, like, I noticed he just all of a sudden got quiet. I had turned my attention off of him for a quick second and noticed he had got quiet. And whenever I turned to look back at him, he was just unconscious, unresponsive. I sternum rubbed him real fast and was like, oh. And, like, at this time, my partner we had the helicopter landed, fire department. Some other firefighters had set up the helipad with the LZ for us. So my partner had gotten in the front of the truck. And, I mean, for the most part, we pretty much had everything done. I just needed to get him back on the monitor. And we had it was like 3-minute ETA from residence to the LZ. So I was like, let's just go. Let's get to the helipad. Let's get to the LZ real fast. So she takes off and starts to drive. And as we're pulling out of the driveway is whenever I'm trying to, like, she didn't even stay in the back of the truck with me at all. She helped me put the patient in, and she went and got in the driver's seat. So we're pulling off, and I'm putting going to put the electrodes back on him. I realize he's unresponsive, unconscious. So I'm like, oh crap! Give him a sternum rub real fast, but like at the same time, like looking at him, I already knew that the sternum rub wasn't going to work. So I just went straight. I turned back to my monitor, pulled out the defibrillator pad, slapped them on him, set it to paddles, and confirmed he was asystole. I started CPR.
Bro.
Like, at the time he was sitting, I had the stretcher sat all the way up to be able to, I didn't want to lay him flat, cause more problems. I laid the stretcher down, start CPR immediately on him. I holler out some profanities. My partner's like, what's going on? I was like, he's in cardiac arrest. I was like, he just coded on me. She was like, oh, I'm going to stop and come back there and help you. And I'm like, no, just go. So I did CPR all the way to the LZ. And she's talking to me through the little window. And she's keeping me updated where we're at. And she was like 30 seconds out. And I said, when we get there, tell that flight crew to get back here. I need help. And she's like, okay. So flight crew jumps in and they're like, what you got? So I'm like, so I give them the rundown of everything, what was going on. Okay, well, right now I remember the flight paramedic on the helicopter. He looks over at me. He was like, hey, you're PIC. What do you need? What do you want me to do? And I was doing compressions at the time, and the flight crew consisted of a flight nurse and a flight paramedic. The flight paramedic was sitting at the patient's head. Flight nurse had came in on the side and was between me and the other medic. And he was like, what do you need me to do? I'm like, go ahead and intubate for me. Give me an airway. He's like, got you, bud. So he works on intubation. The flight nurse takes over CPR from me. I already had a line established, but where my bag was in the back of the truck, I just went to my bag and started going for medication. Gave a couple rounds of epi, and then I just got to a point where I was just like, I don't even know what to do anymore. Like, and I looked at the flight medic, and I'm like, hey, man, I don't know. I'm stumped here. And he was like, nah, man, he was like, you've called out everything that's good. Like, I have no issues with it. He was like, I don't want to change any treatment plan that you've already started. And then I think we did 2 or 3 rounds of epi. And then when we did a rhythm check after the second or third one, whichever one it was, patient was in sinus tach. So we checked for a pulse. And his sinus tach at like 120. So we reached down and felt for a pulse. And sure enough, he has strong carotid and radial pulses.
So we're like, okay, cool. Cycle of blood pressure. Blood pressure comes back at, I think it was like 110s over 50s or 60s. So I look at the flight medic. I was like, y'all gonna fly this, or do you want to transport it by ground with me? He was like, no, we'll fly him. We got room in our helicopter. So I was like, let's get him out of my truck and get him on that helicopter now before something else happens. Moved him over, flew him out. I quit that day. As soon as that call was over, like the helicopter flies off, we go back to the truck to try and get everything back in order. I called the supervisor and I was like, dude, I quit. Like, I felt like I dropped the ball somewhere. I felt like there was maybe something more I could have done. Did I miss something? What, I didn't know. I just felt like I really dropped the ball. Supervisor's like, wow, what you mean you quit? And I was like, I quit. I'm going to the house, dude. And he was like, no, man, you're good. And he's like, let's talk about it. So I told him about it and everything. He was like, man, he's like, from the sounds of it, it sounds like you did everything great. And I was like, man, I don't feel it though. Like, I feel like I missed something. And he was like, man, he's like, from what you're telling me, he's like, I don't think you missed anything. And I was like, all right, well, like, I don't know. I still kind of like got off the phone with him, and I still kind of felt like it. Well, a few hours later, it was probably about 2 hours later, unit phone rings, and it's our dispatcher. And I was like, hey, who's on the truck with you? So I told him my partner's name and everything. And I was like, why are you asking? She was like, well, we just had a phone call. And I was like, oh. She was like, yeah, it was the flight crew from that patient y'all just flew out. And I was like, oh, well, what'd they have to say? And she was like, I don't want to ruin the surprise, but be expecting a call from a supervisor tomorrow. And I'm like, ruin the surprise? And she was like, no, I don't want to tell you. At least tell me if I'm about to get in trouble. And she was like, actually, you're not about to get in trouble. She was like, I don't want to tell you everything. Next day rolls around, and same supervisor I just called and quit to the night before is the one to call me. And he's like, hey, so I got an email. And I'm like, oh, really? An email about what? He was like, it was from that flight crew for that patient you called me about last night. I was like, oh, here we go. Like, the super experienced flight medic is like about to grill me for doing something wrong or something. And he was like, I just texted you a picture. I want you to read it real fast while we're on the phone. I'm like, okay. So I go read the picture, and it's an email from the dispatcher that it was in shift report. So like all the supervisors get shift reports and got to see it. And it was basically flight crew called and stated that paramedic Tylor Arsement and his partner, named my partner, did an outstanding job or ran this call for a patient in flash pulmonary edema, or for a patient complaining of chest pains, and the patient was found in flash pulmonary edema. And then just like basically like commended me like super hard over this call. And I was just like he did everything in his power. He was on his game, like, and just like talked me up. And I was like, wow, okay. Well, little while later in the day, I look at my phone and I got a Facebook message, or I got a Facebook notification, and it was a friend request. Well, it was a friend request from the flight medic who had added me on Facebook and then sent me a message. Hey man, you did great. I can sense that you were beating yourself up over that call last night. I just want to tell you did a great job. He was like, your muscle memory resorted back to BLS and starting CPR, and you absolutely did the right thing by not stopping your transport and only doing CPR until you got to us and get some help. He was like, that is absolutely the right thing to do. Like CPR, like BLS before ALS, and like just talked me up after that, and like boosted my confidence back up. But like that whole time, like throughout that call for a while, for that whole night after that, and then for the most part of the next day until I started getting the phone calls and the notifications, like I was seriously questioning myself of like, do I really know what I'm doing here? And I mean, it took all of that to actually prove, like, for it to actually sit with me that, like, hey, yeah, you did the right thing, man. Like, okay, there was nothing else you can do. Talk to other medics about it and stuff, and they even tell me to this day, like, if I talk to somebody, oh yeah, you did the right thing. Like, I'd have done the same thing, or yeah, like, There's nothing else I would have done. Kind of thinks I'm like, okay, so maybe I do kind of know what I'm doing, and I'm not just winging it. So that would definitely have to be my one that like made me question it hard. So I mean, it was definitely a confidence boost of that the medic actually reached out to me. Like if it was a rainy day and I wasn't getting a flight crew, and from where I was at, there was no other truck between me and the hospital that we were going to go to, and it was going to be a lengthy transport time, I probably would have stopped the truck and had my basic jump back there and, hey, take over CPR while I do all this, and then we'll hit the road, and then like get everything done, and then let's hit the road again. But the fact that I had a crew, like I was able to meet up with another crew to get help, I was just like, nah, let's just get to that other crew. Like I'll just stick with CPR and get to that other crew. I mean, we only had 2 or 3 minutes to get there, so, and I mean, I was by myself. I was doing one provider CPR.
Much to my dismay, the last part of that audio completely, I don't know if I lost it, if it didn't get recorded, whatever it was, but that patient that Tyler's talking about that he ran that call on, they got extubated days later and ended up getting sent from the hospital to like a cardiac rehab center and walked from the hospital bed to the stretcher and had no neurological deficits, had no issues, nothing, just needed further supervision, needed further medical care, but nothing super long-term lasting, which that's so rare. All in all, it was a good interview. It was good to talk to Tyler, get some kind of, pick his brain and stuff. So with that, so guys, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, future topic ideas, please email me at 22 at the lips podcast at gmail.com. Again, that's 22 at the lips podcast at gmail.com. Thanks. Never stop learning, and be safe out there, friends. Without further ado, we'll go ahead and start the questions.
Go ahead. Let's do it. Here should be where you play that song Marvin Gaye, Let's Get It On. No. Like right before we start, like, let's get it on. Some sort of sentimental jazz.
Alright, question number 1.